What's the deal with Paper Mario? No, seriously, what was the disconnect? People like to lament the transition from classic PM to the modern games, but how do we go from TTYD to Super, then to Sticker Star? It's like the old saying about the road less traveled. Well, maybe it's less traveled for a reason. I mean, if the Paper Mario series progression is likened to a road trip, then surely someone on the team had to notice the strange direction they were heading. We're starting off in beautiful and scenic vistas like 64 and TTYD, then before you know it, you're in that weird part of downtown with Super. I'm paranoid, so by then I would have been saying, hello, we take a wrong turn somewhere? But no, they kept on driving, heading further and further down this run-down path. I mean, we're now rolling through ghost towns and ghettos with Sticker Star, but stay the course, they must have said. What? You don't want chore-filled combat encounters and disregarded EXP? I mean, don't even get me started on Color Splash and TOK. I mean, by the time you reach those, you're on the wrong side of the road somewhere with a map in one hand and a compass in the other. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video essay. First off, to those who sat through that awful cold open, I applaud and apologize to you. It's been quite some time since my last video, but things have picked up for the Paperverse team since then. We've launched our podcast series, as you may know. We started working on Direct 2023, Go Team, and there's a few other super duper secret stuff that I'm not allowed to talk about. At any rate, I've been trying to claw back some time to work on my first love, why you should play Paperverse games. You see, I recall briefly talking about what defined a Paperverse game in my first video. I said something along the lines of, the important thing about classic Paper Mario and the Paperverse in general is that Paper Mario wasn't just about a certain style of gameplay. Paper Mario was in essence a style in itself. Now that's a pretty good quote if I do say so myself, but what does that even mean? And with 2 directs under our belts, there's been the question of whether or not we're losing our focus, so to say. See, I acknowledge that it's not a large sentiment or anything, but I feel it's worth responding to. I mean, is it possible to dilute what makes us special in the first place? Well, that's the question I want to answer today, and to do that, I think I need to break out an old friend. Hold on, please, give me a second. Aha! I found it! Some of you in the audience may be too new of a Paper fan to remember this, but if you do remember this, you deserve a senior citizen's discount. This right here was our first crossover type thingy. We called these the cork boards. They were a fun little way to bring the entire community together. From these, we graduated onto the directs, and well, the rest is history. Now, as you can see here, yeah. These are looking a little low res. Unfortunately, back then, the Paperverse wasn't exactly keen on preservation, and the originals have been lost to time. All that's left are these super crunchy and not very legible versions. Man, what even is the resolution for this? Let me see. Wait, what? 680 by 540.
What is this? A center for ants?
Yeah, there's got to be something we can do, right? Maybe AI upscaling? Yeah, that's all the rage these days, huh? All you ever hear about now is AI this and AI that, whether it's for groundbreaking research to cure cancer, or for revolutioning how art is created. It seems you can't avoid this stuff these days. At any rate, let's see if it helps me any. Alright, let's see, just drag it in there and loading. Brings me back to the GameCube days of loading. You know, looking back, load times actually weren't that bad in that generation. Now, it was the Wii, 360, and PS3 generation that had some insane load times. I think people forgot about those. Still going, wow, alright. This is definitely a bottleneck with their website. My PC isn't top of the line, but these specs aren't any slouch either. Well, I guess I'll play a game while I wait. In my never-ending quest to catalog all the paper games, I found an old one I missed called Kirigami? Well, couldn't have missed it if it's had my itch library for years. Let's see, shall we? Well, let's just come back to this one then. Is it finally done? Oh, yes. Finally. Yeah, and look at this. Much more detailed. Let's check the resolution. Hey! 2720 by 2236. Now we're talking. But something's off. Like, I'm looking at the image and it's indeed larger, but wait a minute. That's all they did? Yeah, this website just made the picture bigger. Let's do some napkin math real quick. You take the base image of 680 by 540 and multiply that by 4, I think. Yeah, wow, that's all they did. So it's literally, okay, so it's just 680 times 4 to get 2720 and 540 times, 3.33 repeating, but round up to 4 and you get 1800? Wait, then where'd the extra pixels come from? Well, this is anticlimactic. So much for the bright future of AI. Can't make art, can't cure diseases, and can't make low-res pictures legible. This is not ideal. Well, I guess that was a bust. But beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. So, besides these things being crossover events, we use them to also visualize how Paper Mario-ish a game actually was. Now, I recall there being a lot of internal discussion among the community about what qualified and how the data should be displayed, but in the end we decided that Paper Mario 64 would serve as our origin, or 00 point. And for the x-axis we had combat, then paper aesthetic ran along the y. Pretty simple so far. Even now I think this is pretty solid. You know, it's kind of basic, but it works for categorizing the wide array of games we have. Most are pretty self-explanatory too. A lot of these games will end up in this blue purplish area. These are the easiest to classify in my opinion. It's not a stretch to say something like this was inspired by Paper Mario. But this, yeah, this is gonna take some convincing. So that really just leaves me with these guys, the current pixel mainstays of the Paperverse. At face value, the Paper Mario influence is not evident. In fact, it takes a decent amount of time spent in each one to kind of get to the root of their influence. Or at least I think so. Maybe I'm not the objective arbiter of Paperverse games. Maybe I'm too soft or extremely biased. Anything's possible, so let's give these games a fresh look and plot them on our low-res map. The games we're about to talk about all have smaller size demos, so consider this the speed round of why you should play Paperverse games. Starting with Slyme Breaker. Oh yeah, this game here is a Paperverse veteran, right alongside others like Scrap Story, Seahorse Saga, and Hyper Team Recon. Seeing as this one is already plotted, sort of, I don't have much legwork to do. This is a very straightforward adventure. You play as a rude and nasty knight called Grime, and you get eaten alive by a slime you lost a fight to. You know, sucks to suck. You're then tasked out by this totally not suspicious and upstanding gentleman called the Scarecrow. Yeah, I'm sure this guy would never hurt anyone. Totally on the up and up. Anyways, this game sits firmly in the combat sector, not sharing much else with traditional Paper Mario. There are no partners, no badges, and no experience. You don't get stronger in this game. You as the player get smarter, grittier, and downright nastier as you play for longer. You see, there's this nice little twist here, where the enemies themselves get stronger as you defeat their party. As slimes, you'll absorb each other and recover damage, so you need to be quicker on the uptake and aggressive. You see, it's neat because you can act out of turn and perform actions like the flail snatch, stealing precious enemy health. Stuff like this is great and really helps to sell the character and the cruel world they live in. And this whole loop right here is pretty true to life. So, tangent time. I grew up in a not great neighborhood, if I'm putting it nicely. Economic downturn and lack of industry had kind of killed my hometown for the time being. There wasn't much in the way of opportunity, so everyone had to spend twice as much time worrying about just making ends meet. This meant that as a neighborhood ruffian, my parents and everyone else's were constantly at work, leaving us kids to our own devices. I tell you, the amount of trouble we caused could fill a book or two. I won't incriminate myself too badly, but as kids, we used to terrorize the food delivery people. Pizza men in particular. Most deliveries were made to these dense brick townhomes. Lots of close apartments in disrepair meant plenty of places for, let's say, enterprising youth to lay an ambush. Now, I was a pretty good kid in school, and I actually learned a thing or two. 2007, history class with Mr. Stockley. I'll never forget. We learned about how the National Liberation Front for South Vietnam made these devious little traps for the American forces. Now, instead of learning about the nuance of war and how to become a better person from these horrors, I decided, hey, I can make this stuff at home. And make traps I did. Nothing as elaborate as Home Alone, but you'd be surprised at how effective fishing line really is. Now, it's a simple gimmick really. One person stalked the pizza man, and two of us would hide off in snow mounds with the fishing line. Once he got close enough, we would make the line go taut and would trip the poor guy. See, once he was down, we would then scramble out, snatch the pizza, and disperse like the hooligans we were. This was extremely effective. I can't tell you how many nights I gorged myself on these ill-gotten goods. When they got wise to the fishing line, we dropped water and debris from fire escapes. We got so good that the pizza place stopped delivering to our neighborhood. What'd we do then? Well, we just go to other neighborhoods, of course. We were the modern day 40 thieves. I mean, I distinctively remember 20 different times with at least 2 boxes for the spoils. We're talking almost $500 in yesteryear's money. Yeah, pizza was expensive back then. Now you're probably wondering if I was ever caught, and the answer is no. For a 7.5-year-old, I ran a very tight operation. Now that I'm an adult and a productive member of society, I do feel really bad. A few years back, I actually tried to go back to my hometown to see if the pizza parlor was still there. And to my shock, it was. Unfortunately, the original owner had passed away, and it wasn't even the same pizza place really. It might as well been closed down. Now, I say all that to say that being a dirty little sneak and cheat can be advantageous, just as it is for you in Slime Breaker. Well, I suppose the stakes are a little lower in real life. I mean, it's pizza, not a giant slime with an ecosystem inside of it. A little less action, I say. Oh, yeah, speaking of high stakes in action, you still do have action commands, and that nets Slime Breaker with some paper points. There's also some good exploration here, and I believe this is open world. I need confirmation to be 100% sure, but once you're in, you can pretty much go wherever you want. All in all, very solid, and definitely Paper Mario inspired, even if the inspiration isn't super evident. Now, if I was a lawyer and I had to prove this in the court of law, I think I could swing the jury in my favor. But I'm not gonna lie and say it would be easy. So, with one game down, that brings me to our next game in this pixel pantheon, and that's Reindeer's Story. Now, this one flew a bit under the radar during last year's Direct. It's an adventure game where you play as Lux, a legally distinct reindeer with a very distinctive red nose, and you make your way through a wacky wintry RPG adventure. Some might classify it as a hodgepodge of inspirations, but I feel it blends things pretty nicely. Besides Paper Mario, you've also got influences from Mario and Luigi, my beloved, the older Final Fantasy games, specifically 1 through 6, and Deltarune. Not a bad mix at all. But we're not interested in all those other guys. Nope. Where's Paper Mario? Funnily enough, I actually don't think it's from the combat. Now yes, there's, quote, action commands, unquote, but they don't feel inherently Paper Mario. No, this feels more like if Final Fantasy VI let you get timed hits. See, to me, an action command is more of an intuitive function you perform during combat, not just an attack multiplier. In Paper Mario, your action commands mimic the physical motions of your controller. You pull back on the hammer to swing, or tap in a rhythm to throw things. I think the two styles have been sort of lumped together. and while it's not a huge distinction in the grand scheme of things, I feel it's important because there could be a disconnect for some players. You know what? I'll give you an example. Say you ask me to go out and pick you a fresh bushel of dark cherries. So I go out, I do my picking, and I come back with regular cherries instead. They're both cherries, they both look similar enough, but the taste is noticeably different. Dark cherries are sweeter and more plump, while regular cherries have a strong tart to them. They're not really the same thing. And the same could be said about this style of action command to Paperverse games. Now, I don't want anyone to think I'm picking on Reindeer's story here. It's a very fun time, and I say you should 100% play it. Really, I really think that. But I also think it can represent the disconnect a game can have from its influence. Like, I'm obviously playing devil's advocate here, but the argument does hold some weight. Say I'm a casual fan that's played Paper Mario before, but I have no idea about the Paperverse and what we do. It's not a stretch to think I'd be a little confused seeing something like Slyme or Reindeer's story compared to the likes of the Thousand-Year Door. So, what do you do in a case like that? Well, you just listen to me for a little bit longer. So, I don't think Reindeer's story's inspiration comes from the combat, no. I think it comes actually from the strong writing. Okay, I'm going to say something that may sound like hyperbole, but it's not. Out of all the Paperverse games currently, Reindeer's story has the writing that's the closest to the Thousand-Year Door of old. There's a bit of a crass undertone at times, but the material is very Paper Mario. You know, there's a reason why this developer took point on the Paperverse Direct script. Yeah, they wrote the script for last year. They understand what makes those games funny and enjoyable to read through. The developer also captured the Paper Mario-like exploration very nicely as well. Definitely the strongest out of the Pixel games I'm looking at today. You see, originally I thought it was modeled after Superstar Saga, but then I realized that it's just Paper Mario with a top-down view. The platforming, enemy placement, and town structure is definitely Paper Mario. Superstar Saga's environment is built more like an obstacle course for Mario and Luigi to run through, and less of a grounded world, I would say. It's usually a measure of your abilities rather than a locale you're moving through. There's a very fine line between the two, but to get the gist, I would say play through a little of Sticker Star. Yeah, I know, I said it. Play through a little of Sticker Star, and then run through some of Superstar Saga. Night and day difference in world approach. Paper Mario just excels at making an environment feel lived in. Even the weaker entries in this series have pretty good town design. Not to say Mario and Luigi games don't have strong town design, but I will say the environment detail is just an aspect of Paper Mario that got better over the years. So Reindeer's story sits over here in this area. It's close to the purple region, but doesn't quite make it there because of the combat. Not a bad spot though. A few units under 64 is nothing to sneeze at. So, we've knocked out 2 games so far, and they're in opposite quadrants from each other. Without much common ground. And that's what I'll always love about the Paperverse. We've got 2 wildly differing interpretations on the PM formula, and this is the kind of stuff that breeds awesome creativity. I'll have to revisit Reindeer's story when the full game comes out, since this section I'm playing through is apparently its own standalone thing, though I'm confident enough to place it in its quadrant. Yeah, I mean a little ways off from the other guys, but he's in good company. Well, it looks like we've got a very good spread here. Honestly, this is a lot more varied than I originally thought it would be. You see, the tricky part about using these corkboards is that the defining axes aren't really specific enough to place these games anywhere else, except these wide areas. So we can come up with a game like Slyme and have it next to Donald Wood Experiment. It's just the nature of the beast. We're trying to distill an entire franchise into a qualitative metric. We're almost in splitting hairs territory. I think what we need is a more refined and scientific model, though that will have to wait. My backlog of projects, games, and stuff to do is already so massive. I'll need a team of facilitators to even make a dent in this stuff. Oh, wait, speaking of backlog, that takes me to our last game in this speed round. A game that's been on my radar, but I didn't chop out the time for until now. This is a game that I've had my eyes on, but have been anxiously waiting on the sidelines to try. You see, while we all love Paper Mario and whatnot, my first love will always be the Mario and Luigi series of Alpha Dream Old. Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story defined my childhood. This is the kind of stuff that primed me for the genre and sent me down this game development rabbit hole in the first place. I always wanted more games like these, but a part of me was still tepid on the idea. I mean, too much of a good thing, the monkey's paw, etc, etc. I know what I want, but I'm scared of what I'll get. And that kind of push and pull attitude is what had this game on the radar, but me wanting to approach it very carefully. Angels and Demons in its current form is interesting. And no, that's not code for me saying the game is bad and you shouldn't play it. It's good and you should. No, it's interesting because it's the only game on the list that's the closest and yet furthest from Paper Mario in a sense. It walks the finest line and I'm genuinely impressed. I mean, narrative wise, you follow this scarved fellow, whom you can name, and Yui, your guardian angel. Together you set off on a mission to save the world from demonic interference and reseal the barrier between the physical and spiritual realm. There's runes you have to collect, and the game follows a tried and true formula for progression. Story beats break up platforming and combat encounters quite nicely, and the entire package is just conservative. You can tell the developer is a student of the medium because it all feels very focused in motion. If you wanted a quick elevator pitch, I'd say for comparison's sake that this is like Super Paper Mario and Superstar Saga thrown into a blender. A strange thing to say out loud, I know, until you realize just how well a side-scrolling turn-based RPG can actually work, especially one that leans heavily into the action command side of things. I mean, these action commands are just the star of the show here, honestly. They're varied, quick, and creative, I would say. From the telltale dodging to the freestyle sections, my favorite, they're all this wacky stuff that keeps you wanting to fight the enemies. Though it must be said that this is a side-scrolling platformer RPG and not an RPG with side-scrolling elements. If platformers aren't your thing, then I wouldn't want anyone to be soured, even though I think the platforming has some great fight behind it. The game takes that environment is an obstacle course line of thinking and just runs with it. You got access to an already pretty decent hop, but Yui can give you a boost in the movement department and really expand your options and reach. You can get a Mario Galaxy-esque spin jump along with a wall jump that would make even the most athletic of platforming mascots jealous. You also build up momentum very quickly, mainly due to how fast you can run. You know, a part of me almost wishes that the environment took more of a page out of Sonic's book than Mario's, since with speed like this, you can do some impressive feats. So to cut right to the heart of the matter, the reason why this game alone walks such a fine line is because of the different styles of play. Higher speed platformers and turn-based RPGs aren't exactly winning formulas. Even in the indie space, it's just not something that devs tackle all the time. The two styles are almost inherently against one another. I mean, traditional RPGs are usually slower paced affairs that have you thinking tactically in and out of combat. Then platformers are almost all dependent upon finer motor skills and your ability to be agile in perception. Good platformers have momentum, and the better you are, the more of it you build up, and the more satisfying movement you can pull off in the game. Stopping all of that to deal with an enemy isn't usually fun, but here it is. Interesting. Now why? I think it's actually because of how few enemies there are in the areas, and that levels are built with more verticality and puzzle solving in mind. The obstacle, so to say, you're presented with is getting from screen to screen, and the key to solving this is usually figuring out what combination of running, jumping, and movement tech is needed to clear the path. I said it's interesting earlier, not because I couldn't think of another adjective, but because I don't think this was the true intention. I'm only speculating and I'll have to ask later, but the combination of the character movement, level design, and fewer enemy encounters feels more like it was the result of an experiment rather than a hard, deliberate design choice. Evidence to point this out? Well, in the earlier sections, you can go, I think, up to 3 screens without facing a single enemy. And then go one screen over and have 2 to 3 in the same section. It can be muddling at times and really jarring and momentum stopping, but it is worth playing just for the gameplay mixing alone. And with all that said, Angels and Demons goes right next to Super Paper Mario. I originally debated placing it closer to the combat sector, but in the end, I decided that it would have to be an outlier because of its strong platforming base. You spend most of your time out of combat traversing the world, so that held a lot of weight in the deciding factor. I mean, none of these placements for the games are super official standings, but I do think it's fascinating to see how 3 different pixel art games would stack up to the series they were drawing inspiration from. It really just pleases me to see how they all pull different aspects from Paper Mario to lay their own foundation for their projects. So please don't lose me when I say this. These are Paper Mario inspired games. That's not PR speak, but the genuine truth. You have to look past the superficial aspects of what those games were known for. There's a lot to unpack, twist, turn, and develop for our own purposes. The reason Paper Mario 64 is the origin on this chart is not just because it's where everything started. It's because it's got the largest framework for us to work with. I'm proud of what our developers and partners are accomplishing with the basic blueprints left to us from a 20-year-old game. Just think what you'll see in another 20 years from now. That's the beauty of this community and medium. Pixel, paper, or something else entirely. It's all Paperverse, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Now, I've attached all these game information in the description below, and I'm really asking that you check these guys out. They've all got demos, and they're all different and enjoyable experiences as I've discussed today. These are the kinds of games that people ask larger studios to take chances on and develop. Stop being formulaic. Stop doing the same thing year after year. Give us something new. You see this sentiment everywhere, and well, here's your opportunity for just that. Give them a try, and I don't think you'll be disappointed in what you play. Again, thank you for watching. Please stay safe, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao.